Okay, today's stream, like I said before, this is low or high. Today's stream going to be a little bit different. Not going to be a rush stream like it normally is. Not going to be a malware stream like it normally is. We're going to talk bug bounty. Also, I know my office is a disaster. You're just going to have to be okay with that. We're going to talk bug bounty research. What I've done is I've pulled up a couple of bug bounty write-ups that I found on HackerOne that I liked. And we're going to kind of go over those and discuss what we can take from them, discuss kind of our goals for future bug bounty research, different things like that. I have read over all of them, I believe. I'm like 90% certain that I've already read over all of them. And we're going to kind of go over Valve's bug bounty program specifically because most of the good write-ups that I found were from Valve's bug bounty program. They were pretty impressive, honestly. First, let's thank a couple of folks. Marux, thanks for subscribing on YouTube. Zeropio, thank you for following on Twitch. And I think that's everybody that I didn't get in the last stream. Cool. Okay. So, let's switch to screen real quick. And let's talk bug bounty. So, let's talk just initial goals. One of my big goals, and we're going to do all of this on Excalibur because I just love this program way too much. Goals. First one. That cash moolah. So the first goal is for me to actually make. I'm literally setting the low bar at $1 next year for bug bounty hunting. The reason for that is not monetary. It's more so I want to get an accepted bug that actually counts in a bug bounty program. By the way, YouTube Studio is showing that I've got no viewers, but I'm also getting views. So if you're in chat, say hi. I don't really know what's going on with YouTube Studio. It's being weird. So the goal of that is not necessarily money, though obviously I'm not going to turn that down. The goal of that is to get a bug bounty or a bug accepted as part of a bounty program, if that makes sense. The specific bugs that I'm going to be focusing on are higher dollar technically. We'll talk about that here in a second. That's not necessarily just because of the money, though that was part of it. It was more so because it's, to me, a more interesting part of the research. Okay, we'll get into that later. So making money, obviously that's one goal. Next goal would be, let's just go ahead and pop into this one. Next goal would be learn more about binary reversing. Binary reversing. So to be more specific than just saying bug bounty, we're going to be doing binary type bug bounties primarily. I'm not going to completely ignore web app bug bounties. But from what I've seen in the bug bounty write-ups that I've looked at and from different people talking. What's up? Yes. How's it going? From different people talking about bug bounty, the web app bug bounty programs are flooded with people, and you're getting tons of dupes on there. And, to me, I would rather focus on something a little bit more niche that I can really hunker down on. And I've wanted to get more serious about system programming and low level reverse engineering anyways. So why not combine those two and do, focus my bug bounty research on that specifically. So we're going to be focused more on the binary side than anything. Let's see if I can underline. Is that something you can do on Excalibur? No, that's not what I wanted to do. That was viewing the source. Okay, we're not going to worry about underlining. That's just not worth it. So we're going to be focusing on binary specific bug bounty programs. Again, we're not going to be ignoring the web app side. I'm going to probably write out some code for the like actual web app, like bug bounty programs. But I'm going to be focusing on automation there. Focus on automation. Here's the reason. I like software engineering. Everything else is cool. Reverse engineering is cool. I enjoy reverse engineering. I want to get better at reverse engineering, but my primary focus has always been engineering, like actually writing code and building tools and things like that. And I think that's like a really super useful like area to focus on, building like reverse engineering and bug bounty tools specifically. So we're going to be focused on automation on both the binary reverse engineering side and on the web app bug bounty side. So we're going to be building out tools that are going to help us instead of doing everything manually. Also, from what I've seen, that's kind of the way to go. Like finding things, what's up, Mohammed? Finding things automatically versus doing everything manually is kind of the way to ensure that you get more bang for your buck. So that's one of the areas I want to focus on. It's also fun. I mean, building tools is, to me, fun. And it's also a way to kind of give back. So focus on automation and open sourcing all of the things. So I want to focus as much as humanly possible on open sourcing as many of the tools that, you know, I build as humanly possible. Like, to me, that's just, it's a good mission to have. So in our kind of research, we're going to be focusing on, obviously, the cache is going to come regardless. We're going to be focusing on binary reverse engineering and finding vulns in binaries and web apps, but mainly binaries. And we're going to be focusing on automation and open sourcing as many tools as humanly possible. So, as such, we're also going to get experience just writing reports. Report writing, super important. This is going to sound like a really annoying brag, but I'm fairly rare as a developer. How long have you been working in cybersecurity? I'll answer that in a second. I'm fairly rare as a developer being somebody who's also a good writer. A lot of developers or engineers are not good at writing. They're good at writing code, but they're not necessarily good at like writing in a communicative way. That's why a lot of the bug bounty reports that you see suck. Like, they're just either super dry or they kind of bounce around a lot and aren't like very well written. That's an area that I want to develop more, and it's also an area that I think I'm good at. So focus on writing as many reports as possible. So what that means is, if we think we've found a bug, I'm going to go ahead and write up a report on it. Even if there's a possibility that it's not a bug or it's a dupe or whatever, I'm going to write up the report anyway, not to bug the people. That's kind of a dumb pun. Not to bug the people at HackerOne, which is going to be the site that I use, or, you know, the people running the bug bounty program that I'm submitting to, but more so to develop that like report writing skill, because that's something that is always, it's like a muscle. It's like building muscle. You have to flex that muscle and like actually use it in order for you to build it. So that's going to be another one of the focuses. Also, sharing as much as possible. So here's the thing, with bug bounty programs, you can't disclose everything. So I'm not going to be able to literally live stream me finding vulns in these companies. They tend to frown upon that. It's not very responsible disclosure. I've got my opinions on that, but if I let my opinions get in the way, we're going to have some issues. So it's more so like, let's kind of share as much as we can within certain boundaries, if that makes sense at all. Okay, pause for questions. Yes asked, how long have you been working in cybersecurity? Formally, I've been working in cybersecurity for, let's see, I graduated in 18, 4 years now. Informally, it's probably closer to 6 or 8. So I did a lot of research in college. In the cybersecurity field, I worked a couple of internships in the cybersecurity field. So like, let's just call it like 4 to 8. Let's call it 6. That's easier. I'm sorry this isn't related to what we're doing today, but what's your take on WASM? How do you think it will affect the web from a security standpoint? that's something I'm too ignorant on WASM to really like make an educated comment on. It's something that I want to learn more about, and Rust is kind of supplying me with a way to learn more about WASM. It seems like it's highly performant. It seems like my understanding is that WASM basically runs in its own sandbox, which sounds more secure. JavaScript is an absolute disaster security-wise. Even though I love the language, I write almost everything in JavaScript, but it can kind of be a little bit of a disaster security-wise. Like you can really just screw up with JavaScript. So my hope is that WASM and all of the supporting technologies like Rust and like JavaScript rendering in WASM, like I'm hoping that that ends up being a good thing. Again, it's an area that I need to improve my knowledge on. So I'll get there eventually, but I'm not there yet. But that's kind of my like 30-second hot take. Okay, I think it's super user friendly with Golang. Golang, another thing that I'm entirely too ignorant on, and I need to like actually read up on and try to code in. I might do like a learning Golang series or video or something like that. Thank you for the feedback. No problem. Okay, so those are some of our goals. I probably have more bouncing around in my head that I need to like get down on paper. So I'll put those in this box once I have that. Also, can I make this public? Is that a thing that I can do? Let's see if I can do that. Can I make it public? I don't know how I would do it. It also doesn't matter. Only members of this workspace. So I can share a link to it. I don't know if anybody would even be interested in doing that. And I also don't know that I want to like be an admin for that. Do you have any tips for beginners trying to get into cybersecurity? I have tons of tips. One. Okay. Beginners, let me see where the timestamp is because I might break this out into its own video. Timestamp of 15 minutes. Question from Yes was, do you have any tips for beginners trying to get into cybersecurity? Yes. One, learn how you learn. That sounds like a dumb thing. One, don't. I have my opinions there. Not going to put them. But learn how you learn. So me personally, I learned visually. That's why I first got into like YouTube. Not necessarily just like uploading, but like watching YouTube. I learned very visually. So I like to watch videos that teach me how to do things. You might learn from reading. You might learn from listening. Find out how you learn and like really hammer into that. The most important thing in just about any field, especially in tech, is being a good self-learner, because things work so fast that you can't rely on other people to teach you things. That doesn't mean that other people suck. My personal experience with formal education in college was that it was bad. High school was worse. I went to a rural high school and a not super technically renowned college, let's put it that way. Like they had great researchers, but their like actual education was pretty trash, and more expensive than it was worth. So the important thing that I got out of that was, if I want to learn a thing and get good at that thing, I need to teach myself. And I got good at that. One thing that I pride myself in is being good at teaching myself. Number two, don't pick a niche too early. A lot of people try to niche down, and niching down is super important later on in your career, but being a generalist is super useful. That's one of the reasons why, even though I'm not doing threat intelligence work right now, technically, I'm really glad that I got into threat intelligence, because threat intelligence kind of forced me to generalize. And what I mean by generalize is I had to know a little bit about reverse engineering. I had to know a little bit about OffSec. I had to know a little bit about like blue teaming and SOC. I had to know a lot about intelligence and like the intel cycle and like how to produce and write intelligence and things like that. So that generalization, becoming a generalist was super useful. And I still kind of consider myself a generalist, even though now I'm like in software engineering more specifically. I still sort of kind of consider myself a generalist, because I still know about all of those things, and I still kind of flex those muscles and like read intelligence reports, and I still do a little bit of reverse engineering, and I still do all of the things that I do on YouTube. Even though I'm a developer, I still kind of do all of those other things as well. That said, later on in your career, you're going to want to kind of niche down a little bit. You're going to want to be the guy who's good at reverse engineering. You're going to want to be the guy or girl who's good at like SOC stuff. You're going to want to be the person, I'm going to put it that way because that's a little bit more friendly. You're going to want to be the person who is known for being good at something. For me, at first, it was threat intelligence. Then it became software engineering in a threat intelligence environment. So I am kind of specialized at writing security tools. That's kind of my specialization. And the reason why you end up specializing later on in your career is because A, that's where the money's at, and B, that's where you feel the most fulfilled. Eventually you will find a niche that you really enjoy, and you're going to want to hammer into that so that you can stick with that niche. You know, basically, if you stay a generalist, but you have this thing that you're super passionate about, eventually you're going to kind of like flutter away from that thing that you're like super passionate about. And you don't want to do that. Like I did that for a while, where I was super passionate about engineering, but I kept trying to like shoehorn myself into a threat intelligence role, and I didn't like it. You know, it just wasn't for me. It's nothing against threat intelligence necessarily. I guess I could switch over to my face since I'm just talking right now. So self-teaching, being a generalist, eventually niching down. Career-wise, if we're talking like salary and professional development, do not be afraid to leave a job. That's going to look very bad on me as a professional. That does not mean like straight up leave every other month, but it does mean if you are not feeling fulfilled, or if you feel like you are being underpaid or underappreciated, do not be afraid to leave. Right now we're in an economic downturn, so it's a little bit more difficult. There's a little bit more like shakiness in the like kind of environment, if you were looking for new jobs. But don't think like just because, just because you've got this job and it feels like, this amazing amount of money that you're making and this really cool blah, 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 you can find another place that will appreciate you more or pay you more or that you enjoy more. I've switched jobs on average like once a year for the last couple of years. My salary has doubled, and I'm now in a job that I feel much more fulfilled at. I'm going to stay at this job longer because I've got a higher salary and because I feel more fulfilled. So you kind of have to like eventually land on a place where you're going to stay a little bit longer. But until then, like, do your thing, like support yourself, because you're going to be like your biggest ally there. So let's see, what else have I got? There are probably like hotter takes. This might be a hotter take. Learn a programming language well. Even if you're doing something that isn't engineering, it helps to be able to script stuff up. And it helps to be able to script stuff up quickly. So learning a programming language like fairly well, you don't have to be just like a down in the weeds expert at it, but learning a programming language fairly well, super helpful. Learn communication and teamwork. You will be working in a team wherever you're at. It doesn't matter how good you are or where you go work, you're going to be working in a team, so you might as well get used to that and get good at it. Okay, I'm going to read over chat real quick. It's about persistent effort, not making big steps occasionally. Agreed. Try to learn the technology before learning how to secure. Agree there. Competitions are important to get started. CTFs are okay. Not going to say they're that important. I didn't really get into them, but depending on where you're trying to go, like if you're trying to go into OffSeg, CTFs are pretty good. 1 mile distance, 1 inch depth at first, and then pick a topic. Agreed. Try to document your learning. Explaining concepts make you better. Yes. Start a blog. It's free to do Medium. I got my start on Medium. It's fun. It gets your name out there. Professional development is good. Learning how to communicate is good. I have a good amount of experience in Python and Bash. I'm currently trying out Rust. Good deal. Do you think that the U.S. is a need for foreign cybersecurity professionals? I think a video about the industry state in the U.S. would be much appreciated. Ooh, that sounds like a fun topic. Foreign cybersecurity professionals is complicated. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The approach right now is complicated. I keep saying complicated. Basically, in certain areas in the cybersecurity field, being a foreigner honestly is bad. And that sucks. And I wish it weren't that way. But like working in the defense industrial base, working in government, obviously, like those type of fields, going to be very, very hard if you're from certain countries. Sucks, but that's it. Halo X1, I'll cover your question in a second, and then I need to get back to bug bounty research stuff. So sucks, but that kind of is what it is. Telecommunications engineering, and I'm scared I'm going to be rough for the next couple of years. Telecom seems like they're fairly accepting of like foreigners, at least from what I've seen. Obviously, I'm a white dude, so like I've got a very different experience from, frankly, somebody whose name is Muhammad. Like very different. So, it depends. I would say the defense industrial base is going to be a pretty hard nut to crack. Government going to be a very hard nut to crack. Any like highly regulated industry aside from like healthcare, you probably are pretty good to get into healthcare, healthcare security, obviously. So it's not like a no. Like I don't think you're going to face like huge issues there because there are tons of opportunities, but it's different for white dudes versus like basically anybody else. Like it's a lot easier for me to get a job, frankly, than it is for tons of other people, and that sucks. And that's something we all need to like work on changing. But if I said anything else, I'd be lying to you, and I don't want to do that. Halo X1, this is probably a stupid question, but what are the basic things I need to learn from malware dev? You need to learn how to program. I've got a video on the topic. I'm not going to spend too much time on questions because I've already done a lot of that. Let's see. I did a video on it a while ago. Let's see if I can find it. Yep, here it is. I'm about to hear my voice on stream. That sucks. There it is. Let me toss this in chat real quick and toss it in Twitch chat to all 2 people watching on Twitch. How's everybody doing? All 2 of you devoted folks. Okay, so end rant at 25 minutes. That was about a 10-minute discussion on how to get into cybersecurity. Those are all hot takes, by the way. There's tons, like this could be its own video that I might do later. I'm definitely gonna make that a stream highlight. But that's been kind of my experience. I hope it helped some. That was kind of like the high level explanation. Cool, bug bounty. Okay, let's read over some reports. So I chose these reports based off of, quite frankly, not that much searching. I didn't spend just a ton of time looking through reports, but this is from, ooh, you're going to hear that. That's loud. I'm taking these lifting shoes off. So these are all from the Hacktivity tab on HackerOne. I chose them because they made money, for one thing. Some of them are well written. This one, I don't really know why I chose this one. I'm probably not going to even show that on stream. But I also learned a couple of things from them that we're going to kind of talk about. So let's start here. RCE on Steam client. So all of these are from Valve's bug bounty program. 2 reasons there. One, Valve has a good history of filling bug reports very quickly. 2, a lot of them are binary focused. So like I said, that's the focus I want to kind of drill in on. 3, they had a lot of disclosed reports. And 4, it seems like Valve has just got a generally good bug bounty program. So that's probably going to be the one that I focus a lot of effort on. That in game hacking is cool. And there's tons of stuff about it. Okay, so RCE, let me zoom in a little bit. RCE on Steam client via buffer overflow and server info. This one's pretty cool if I remember correctly. So they give a good, so this one, I believe I noted this one because A, it's got pictures. Some of them are a little small, but it does have pictures. And B, it's fairly well written, has a video of the POC and actual POC code, which absolutely awesome that A, they took that effort to include the POC code, and B, Valve was cool with including that in a disclosed report. That's pretty rad, honestly. Okay. Introduction. In Steam and other Valve games, CSGO, Half-Life, TF2, there's a functionality to find game servers called the server browser. Any of us who have played video games, which is probably most of us in chat, know what this is talking about. It's just the server browser. In order to retrieve the information about these servers, the server browser communicates with a specific UDP protocol called server queries, and then they give a link. It's a Valve software link, and their wiki seems like it's very good. The protocol is well described in the Online Developer's Manual of Steam. We implemented a custom Python server, RAD, which only replies with the protocol using the same information available in the documentation. So basically, they created a server mimic. After successful implementation of the protocol, we fuzzed several parameters and noticed that the Steam client crashed when receiving replies from our custom server. More specifically, the client crashed when we replied with a large player name used in the A2S_player response. When attaching a debugger, we noticed it crashed due to a stack-based buffer overflow. Rad. Just no notes, super cool. This clearly indicates that something was wrong, and we investigated it further to be able to exploit the buffer overflow. After further inspection, we noticed that the overflow occurred in the server browser library. At some point, the player's name is converted into Unicode, and an overflow occurs because the boundaries were not checked. Also, there's no canary protection present, which allowed us to overwrite the return address and execute arbitrary code on Windows. So, let's head on back to trusty Excalidraw. Basically, let's create a big box for the game server exploit. Let's make this big. Game server exploit example. And let's include a link. This is a very well written report. Has lots of cool things to learn from. So I'm going to save it here. So basically what they were saying was they set up a fake server here. Fake server. And when the client, let's scoot this stuff over, uses the server browser. So this is the server browser. Yep. And this is the client. So when they use the server browser, and the server browser is going to make some lookups from the fake server, and the fake server is going to send something nasty back. And that something nasty is parsed badly by the server browser library. So info lookup long player name. Server browser has a library within it that parses this long player name in a way that isn't safe, and that causes a buffer overflow, which allows them to run arbitrary code on the client. So now you've got the fake server that is able to exploit the client and run arbitrary code, all of that fun stuff. Not good. And that is why this report, they got hella paid if I remember right. Let's see, let me search for the $. Yeah, they made 18 grand off of this report, which frankly almost sounds low, considering it's an RC that can be used pretty widely from my understanding. Basically, if they set up one browser, I believe that can be fairly widespread in the exploitation, at least from my understanding. So 18 grand seems low, but still fairly, I guess it's right here. Still a fairly good amount of money. I'm going to be right back. I'm going to get some more water. Hi, I'm back. Forgot to turn sound back on. Okay, so to answer your question, Mohammed, I believe they're setting up their own server that is going to show up in the server browser. So I believe anybody who sends a like lookup request to this server is going to get is going to receive this exploit, at least from my understanding. We'll read more in the report and it may explain it. This clearly indicates something was wrong. I'm going to investigate it further to be able to exploit it. Okay. We wanted to prove impact and build an exploit. First, we tested it on Linux, and we were able to control the execution flow instantly by overwriting the return address. However, on Linux, we were able to control 2 bytes of the EIP register only, and we didn't exploit it further. On OS X, the process terminated with a sig abort, which means that there's probably a canary protection in the library on OS X. Then we tried to exploit it on Windows and we were successful. Okay, so this right here says it's only going to work on Windows clients, which frankly is going to be most of them. That's why exploit development and malware research is so common on Windows. On Windows, sending a player name via UDP like A times 1000 would result in the following stack layout. So it's going to show a ton of bytes there. I guess we can't view the whole thing. That sucks. This happens due to the Unicode conversion wildcard because player names can use Unicode characters. Sending a player name with Unicode characters like that would result in the following layout. So then you get control over the whole thing. However, since we were corrupting the stack and registers before the function returns, we had no control over the EIP register yet. The program was crashing after dereferencing the EDI register. What if you analyze some zero-day exploits? Someday, not today. Also, they won't be 0 days. That's if I had 0-day exploits, I'd sell them, frankly. But I will do some exploit analysis at some point. I've got lots of plans for the future, man. Frankly, I'm probably going to do like a YouTube video specifically on like what I'm planning for next year. But bug bounty is one of those things, and bug bounty is going to end up leading into some like exploit research as well, obviously, since that's what bug bounty is kind of all about. However, since we were corrupting stack and registers before the function returns, we had no control over the EIP register yet. The program was crashing after dereferencing the EDI register, but we had control over it. We satisfied these special conditions using the constant values present on the steam.exe binary. What OS are you running? This stream is running on Windows, frankly. My day-to-day, I use Mac. My daily driver, Linux operating system is usually Arch. And I'm just shocked that I haven't mentioned that before, because that's what Arch people do. Okay. So this is a part that I don't understand. However, since we were corrupting the stack and registers before the function returns, we had no control over the EIP register yet. That makes sense. The program was crashing after dereferencing the EDI register. That makes sense, but we had control over it. Also makes sense. We satisfied the special conditions using the constant values present on the steam.exe binary. That doesn't make sense. So this is a part that I'm not understanding. So it dereferences the EDI variable. Let's see where that's happening. Seems like there's a simple buff right there. Yeah, there is. That's what this is about. So this whole thing is about a buffer overflow exploit in Steam. I don't think it's in this code snippet though. I just don't understand exactly what they're talking about. We satisfied these special conditions using constant values present on the steam.exe binary. I'm not understanding what special conditions. Oh, okay. So it's crashing after dereferencing the EDI variable, but they had control over it. So basically, if we go here, so they had control over EDI. They just had to put basically something in EDI. So steam.exe, some memory address. So Basically, they had to put some address that made sense in that context within EDI whenever they controlled it. My question there is, wouldn't ASLR make that difficult? Maybe I don't understand ASLR well enough, but like these addresses, so it's dereferencing it, so I don't know. Like, wouldn't ASLR make that more difficult? I might be wrong. I mentioned they don't have full control over the registry. Yeah, so they do have full control over the EDI register. So that's how they're able to pull this off. Basically, what they did was they overwrote EDI with an address that makes sense. One of the constant addresses, it's a constant address. So it's always going to be the same. And I don't know why, I don't know what address they would have like overwritten it with, but I guess it like made sense in the control flow. I also mentioned there's no canary protection. Yeah. So obviously that's a problem. Then we built a Unicode ROP chain with gadgets from steam.exe only to call virtual protect dynamically to make the stack executable. Okay. That's interesting. This is a complicated exploit, frankly. Like ROP is something that even when I was doing exploit research, I didn't understand super well. ROP's not, I don't know. It probably makes sense to people with better understanding of like lower level stuff to me. But yeah, that's not an easy exploit to do, and that's probably why they made bank off of this. Otherwise, the string would be terminated. There was a big challenge since we couldn't use values like 40 in a ROP chain, otherwise the string would be terminated, so they had bad characters. And we couldn't use invalid Unicode characters like that because the library replaces them with question marks. Okay. So if you've played a Steam game like CSGO, or a Valve game like CSGO, you've seen this. Like invalid Unicode characters will cause like question marks. I've seen that several times playing CSGO. Note, everything is calculated using the steam.exe base address. This address, okay, here it is. They're addressing it. Everything is calculated using the steam.exe base address. This address changes if you restart your Windows 8 or Windows 10, not if you relaunch Steam. This exploit is 100% reliable if you edit the base address on the exploit, but you can't predict the base address in the computer of a victim due to ASLR. However, we have two exploitation scenarios. Only 9 bits are randomized. An attacker can successfully exploit the victim with a probability of 0.2%, which is more than enough if we are talking about an attacker distributing this exploit massively to all Steam users. Okay. This vulnerability can be chained with another memory leak vulnerability to make it 100% reliable. Okay. Let's talk about that for a second. Because this addresses something that we brought up earlier, like the widespread exploitation. So, ASLR, or, that's the wrong thing. ASLR, or address space layout randomization, basically will change the base address of an executable and all of the different relative addresses that it uses every time your PC is restarted. What they're saying here is basically if I were to exit the game and then restart the game without restarting my PC, that base address is going to be the same. So if the exploit worked when you started the game the first time, it's going to keep working. The other thing that they were talking about, only 9 bits of that base address are randomized. An attacker can successfully exploit a victim with a probability of 0.2% or 1 out of 512, which is more than enough if we are talking about an attacker distributing this exploit massively to all Steam users. So what they're saying there is they don't have to get it right for every user. They just have to get it right for 1 out of 512 users. Ooh, excuse me. And when you think about how many people are playing Steam at a given time, let's see if we can look that up. Let me switch back to screen. How many people are playing CSGO? Let's look at CSGO. 449,293 players. So if we open up calculator, that may not be recent. Oh, it's actually more. So 599,942 players divided by 512. So they're getting 1,200 players. Oh, I don't have this pulled up. They're getting like 1,200 players, statistically, like this isn't real numbers, but they're statistically able to exploit 1,200 players just by randomly picking an address, essentially. So that's pretty good odds. Like that's not bad. Let's see. It's also mentioned there's no canary. Yes, I think it's a buffer overflow. Yes. How is rated this full in CVSS? It did not get a CVSS score, I believe, because it's specific to Valve. So I don't know that I don't even think they got a CVE for it. No, they didn't. Oh no, it got a 9.6 severity, which is another reason why I think 18,000 is fairly low. But I'm not going to harp on that. Like payouts for bug bounty are a contentious topic, it seems like. Well, with the number of restarts, this probably can get higher. Right, exactly. So they're also keeping the server online. So like you said, Mohammed, if the server is online and I don't get the exploit the first time and that person restarts that PC, they're basically rolling the dice again, and that exploit might work the next time. So you multiply that across 600 or 6 million, something like that, 6 million players, like you're going to get a lot of exploitation. Okay, steps to reproduce. First, make sure that you have Steam installed. If you have the beta version, please uncomment the beta version gadgets in the exploit code. Download the attachments. They've got the exploit attachment down below. Use a debugger like Immunity Debugger and attach it to Steam. Grab the base address of steam.exe and edit the Steam base variable on the Steam server exploits to make the exploit 100% reliable. I like how they're kind of like, there's some salesmanship to this. They're just like, it's 100% reliable. Okay, run the exploit on a server of your choice, for example, localhost. Edit poc.html and change the IP address of the server and the iframe source. Oh, they're serving this on an iframe. That's even cooler. Open it in a browser and wait for command.exe to be executed. There you go. You can also open the server. Okay, so this is, now I'm remembering what I read earlier. This is interesting, and it's not going to make sense unless you kind of have used Steam before. Let's see if this POC explains it. By server, we mean Valve server. No, this is a personally run Python server. So this is a piece of Python code that's running. Crap, what happened? Okay, let me refresh this page real quick. And that should be the reason why the bounty is low. If it's the case, you need to make an initial attack to reroute traffic towards the attack server, or at least proxy. I don't think so. Again, I think this is if your server shows up. Here, we'll keep reading and discuss it. Okay, here's the POC. Okay, so this is showing it. So all you have to do is view server info in order to get served this exploit. So basically, what they did there, let's break down the video. What they're doing here is they've just got Steam open, so it's not even like a specific game client. So they've just got Steam open. They go to the server browser, and they find their specific server that's serving the exploit. And again, this is not a Valve server. Anybody can pop one of these servers up on like a virtual host on DigitalOcean or something like that, and plop it down there, run the Python script, and technically this will work. Okay, so they go to the specific server that's serving the exploit. They go to view server info, and it's popped. Because what this is exploiting is the specific library that will parse the server info. So if you see when they press view server info, they get a request to their server, and that turns or that sends back the I believe it's A2S player info or something like that, and that returns it back, and then they get exploited. So you don't need, this is not running on any of Valve's stuff. You can run it on any DigitalOcean Droplet or whatever other VPS like hoster you've got, and it can be mass exploited. The only difference is that so we showed, I think it was 6 million players online. 6 million players are not going to right click and press view server info. So this isn't just, it's not going to like worm or anything. Like it's not super, like it's not going to just completely just spread across the entire internet like super quickly. You've still got to like interact with the server in a certain way in order to get it to work. But it still is, fairly exploitable there. All right, let me read chat. That would be the reason why the bounty is low. I love this channel. Mr. Roboter, that was kind. I think it depends a lot from the user interaction. Right, so that's one of the reasons why the bounty is probably low, being fair. And by low, 18,000 is like a life-changing amount of money for a lot of people. So I'm not going to call like 18,000 like low. That's a fairly large. I would not turn down $18,000 if you offered it to me right now. This is really interesting. I thought the client only connects to the Valve-controlled servers. Yeah, so that's a thing. That's one of the big draws with like Valve games or Source games specifically, is anybody can start up a server, and that's why you get like custom servers that have mods and fun shit like that. But it also allows for exploitability like this, which I think is rad. Steam Client POC Windows 10. Okay, so this is the one that we haven't watched. Steam URL POC contains a video of the exploit being triggered on Windows 10 via malicious web page containing a hidden iframe that will trigger the exploit automatically. So this is interesting. In this video, Steam was not running when visiting the malicious web page, and it was automatically started. This also works when Steam is already running. So this is the part that's interesting. So they are serving an iframe within a malicious web page that if you visit that web page, it will trigger the exploit. This is where it can get nasty. Okay, so you can pop this iframe on any web page. I can exploit another website and pop this iframe in there, and this would do this exact thing. 18K can be an engineering pay for 3 years here, though. Yeah. Okay, so watch this. This is where things get kind of cool. Okay, so they've just got the server running, and they're visiting a URL, right? Okay, so they've actually created a fake phishing page. That's kind of cool. Watch out, there's a hidden iframe here. Okay, so you've got a hidden iframe. It automatically starts Steam, right? So it opens up Steam, and then it runs the exploit, right? So this is that server lookup. So it's basically causing Steam to do that server lookup right here. And then the exploit runs, and they get bopped. Okay, so this is not interacting with Steam. You don't have to do that server info lookup that we were talking about earlier. This is where it can get super nasty. This is where it can spread like a lot. Okay, so this is a fairly nasty vuln, and this is where I think, like earlier we were talking about, it's not super, easy to exploit. That's why the bounty is low. Here is where it's super easy to exploit. You pop it on a web page and get people to visit that web page, and it pops the boxes. So yeah, that's not great. Protocol handlers get triggered even by iframes. That would be so bad. Right. Yeah, this is nasty shit. So here's the HTML page right here. This is okay. So we can download that real quick. This is the iframe. Let's open it. Not in our browser, just in case, Let's pop it open with. Can I not open it in code? Why is code not going to open it? I guess you can't see any of this, but it's nothing interesting. I'm just trying to find Visual Studio Code so I can open it in that. Oh, that's super annoying. Okay, we'll just open it in Atom. That'll have to do. All right, so here's the HTML POC. So that's the background image, not interesting. Okay, so here's the iframe. This iframe right here is wicked simple. It's just got a 0 width, 0 height, 0 border iframe that just has a source right here. And this source triggers Steam to open. It uses connect / and then the IP, and that's going to trigger, like that is literally all that is required to trigger this exploit, which is nasty. Just nasty. So yeah, that's what you were talking about with the protocol handlers. Let me max that out a little bit so you can see it better. So this Steam : // that's the protocol handler. So like you said, there's one for Magnet, which is for perfectly legal torrenting. There's one for Steam. There's one for Slack. There's one for Zoom, I want to say. Not entirely certain about those last two. But yeah, protocol handlers. They're fun and apparently exploitable. All right, now we got to the meat and potatoes. I've spent a lot of time on this one write-up because it's that good. But we'll get to probably two more, I think. I think we'll go through two more. Okay, so this is running on raw sockets on Python, so they didn't use any like HTML libraries. I don't think they could because this is a UDP exploit. This right here is what you would want to change with the Steam base. This is a fairly old write-up, if I remember right. Let's see. This was December 21st, 2018, so I'm not going to be able to get the vulnerable version of Steam, or I don't really want to put the effort in to do that. So that's why I'm not like showing this live. Okay, so they've got some shell code here. I believe that just opens command.exe. If I were a good reverse engineer, I would reverse engineer that shell code right now, but I'm not, so I won't. Then we've got the UDP server. So this is setting up the server, it looks like. Yeah, so this is setting up an infinite listener right here. Creating, this is just normal socket stuff. I believe this is the port they said Steam is looking for. Debugging info, bind the host and the ports, and start your loop. So you're receiving this data right here. You're expecting 128 by 1024 bytes. And then they're calling check request type. Check request type is header byte contains the type of request. If the header is that, so this is what they're looking for right here, I believe. No, this is what they're looking for. I want to say. Let's see. If request is equal to info, then we create an info reply. I believe this is like a multi-request like conversation they're having to have. I believe you need a create info reply and you send that back to the client, and the client sends the one that you actually want, which is the player type, and then you send the payload. So create info reply right here. That's setting up the so that's probably headers. That's headers. So it's a 1 byte header. I don't know what this pre is right here. We could dig into the protocol docs on Valve, but we're not going to. By the way, you can create a custom one on Windows by fiddling with the registry. Oh, that's neat. I didn't know that. Okay, so that's the server name. We saw that in the POC demo. That's the map name, DE-Dust2, an absolute classic. Folder, CSGO. Nothing shocking there. Counter-Strike Global Offensive, ID. That's probably a hard-coded thing they found in the docs. Players, probably not super worried about that. That's probably just like, that's 255, and I think that was in the POC video that we watched. Max players, same thing. Bots, bots in game, so that's probably just 0 bots. Server type. D is dedicated server, okay. Environment, hosted on Windows, Linux, or Mac. L is for Linux. Okay. Visibility, password needed, no. VAC enabled, that's probably a yes. Version, blah, blah, blah. And so now you're just basically returning a concatenated version of all of that. Okay, so that's basic enough. Then I'm assuming the client is going to send a player request, and this is where you actually send the payload. So if we go over to create player reply down here, create player reply. You've got your pre, you've got your header, you've got your players, you've got your index player, and then you've got name player 2, and that's going to be, I'm assuming, the shell code there, or at least the exploitation part of it. That's not important, that's not important. And then you throw all of that on the wire, and bada bing, bada boom. So let's look at how they are putting all of this together. Now this is going to be where things get more complicated. So I'm not going to understand most of this, honestly. So here they're setting up the ROPS. So they convert address. Let's see what that does. So that just converts it to Unicode. So these are relative addresses. So it's the Steam base plus the gadget plus some sort of offset here. So these are all hard-coded addresses of the gadgets that they found. Okay. So they're created. This is a ROP sled, which means like basically each individual piece of code jumps to another one, jumps to another one, jumps to another one, and eventually you jump into your own code. So that's basically what they're doing here. So they're setting up all of these gadgets, writable address, virtual protect, iData, new protect. So this is setting up like actually making the stack executable, which is the part that actually like runs the exploit. This is just documentation. Oh, so that's for the beta. So if you're using the beta version of Steam, you would uncomment this. And then you've got your ROP. So you're building all of these gadgets together. This is interesting syntax here. How did they do that? Oh no, that's actually right there. So that's just a super long ass variable name. That's ugly. I'm assuming these are to fill data that isn't necessarily important. That's why they're just ubeef or Unicode beef. So they're building the ROP here. Special conditions to avoid crashes. Payload is A times 24. Okay, so here's where the payload is, right here. So A times 24. 1024. So that's going to do the buffer overflow. Those are pointless bytes here. So you're overflowing 12 pointless bytes. Then you've got your special condition 1. Not entirely sure what those are. Then you got your special condition 2 times 31. Not entirely sure what that is either. Then you've got your ROP, which is this up here. This is your ROP sled. And that ROP sled is eventually going to lead into your shellcode. And then you're going to throw all of that encoded in UTF-8 and throw a null byte at the end of it. Okay, that was long as hell. So basically you're returning that response up here. Right there. And then you're sending it. Done. Cool. Okay, so we just walked through what is a fairly cool exploit. I would love to actually dig into this exploit, but since it's so old, I just don't feel like putting forth that much effort into like reversing it. Okay, so here's where they discuss the impact, which is a really like important section of a report. An attacker can execute arbitrary code on the computer of any Steam user who views the server info of our malicious server. I mean, honestly, you could probably leave it there. Usually an attacker would initiate a backdoor connection to a C2 infrastructure to gain access to the computer of the victim. That's not a very well written sentence, and I don't really understand what they're saying there. Usually an attacker would initiate a backdoor connection to a C2, I'm just going to get rid of infrastructure, and connection to a C2 to gain access to the computer of the victim. I guess. From there on, an attacker could do whatever he or she wants. Okay, so I guess they're saying after exploitation, an attacker would initiate a backdoor connection to a C2 infrastructure to gain access to the computer of the victim. Okay, they're talking about a reverse shell there. Like, it's not the explicit terminology that they're using, but they're talking about a reverse shell. From there on, an attacker could do whatever he or she wants: account takeover, steal all items from the Steam account, install additional malware in the OS. Yeah, I mean, that you've got control over the OS there. There are several ways to trick a user into running the exploit. User views the server info on the Steam client server browser. User visits a malicious page of an attacker where a Steam browser protocol request is initiated. Cool. We've talked about this. Lots of users don't need to click the Open Steam button on the browser. Talked about that. First info replay that doesn't contain the exploit can have interesting values to trick the user. Cool. That's interesting. Okay. My cat's asking to come in. 1 second. Okay. So, you can... I'm going to share the link to this report because I just realized that I haven't done that. And I also haven't looked at chat. Let me throw these links in chat real quick. Okay, so we're gonna talk about this report more high level here in a second, but let me read over chat real quick. Each time some bug requires almost any user interaction, most of these companies lowball it as fuck. Yeah, that's what it seems like. What do you think about Zerodium? Since you're interested in binary exploitation, should we expect a series? I'm kind of in need of a refresher and would do my best to promote the content in my circle. Instead of running a program, I would drop reverse shell. Yep. Talking about the C2 to orchestrate. Yep. Cat, please. Oh, you want to see the cat? Come here. The cat. Everybody. This is Aspen. There's the cat. Don't kick the mic. Damn. Okay. So, cool notes on this report. Let me pop over to Excalibur and we'll talk about it. So, notes. First off, for the most part, and by for the most part, I mean like 99.9% of it, very well written. Included pictures, videos, and POC code. Rad. Like, that's cool. Fantastic. Oh, I didn't answer your question. Mohammed. Yes, we're going to do... So I started a binary exploitation series a long time ago. And did like one episode. It was super well received, and I just never did one again. That was stupid. So we're going to be doing more of that, for sure. So very well written, included pictures, videos, and POC code. Obviously rad. What I found interesting was it was a server-side exploit, essentially. Server-side exploit. So the exploit was served by the server because apparently... What I didn't realize is you can very easily get a spoof server set up in the server browser on Valve. Like, that is... There's, like, lots of potential for badness there. I did not know that you could do that easily. Apparently you can, which is cool. Let's see. Lots of note. I mean, like, really, really well explained from a technical POV. Lots of debugging, and they were very like they tested it on 3 different operating systems, which is like that is what a Valhalla Research team is going to need in order to get you your bounty as quickly as possible. They're like, okay, we need to check this on 3 different operating systems. Wait, actually they already tested it on 2. So like we'll still try it out on those 2, but we don't need to worry about them as much. This definitely works on Windows though. So it kind of tells the bounty receiver, the company that you're submitting to, like where to look, which is very helpful. Just like awesome bro thing to do. What other notes have I got? Let's see. It's well written. They've got multiple. So what I thought was cool, they've got multiple avenues of exploitation. I like that. They're basically showing you can do this through the server browser, you can do this through a browser. That's really like wicked cool. Like they were very like in depth there. Just the ability to trigger or connect to servers should be its own vulnerability now. It allows a stealthy gathering of information. Well, so from that point of view, it allows a stealthy gathering of information on users. Essentially, if you're setting up a game server and you're connecting to a game server, your understanding is that you're giving up information. So, same thing as if you're connecting to a website. If I'm connecting to Facebook without a proxy or without a VPN or whatever, my understanding is that Facebook now has my IP address and a ton of other information. When you're connecting to a game server, it's the exact same. So you have to have an understanding. I'm giving up some information here. I don't think that's a vulnerability necessarily, but as you can see, they didn't view it as an innate vulnerability, but they knew that that information can kind of be like played with a little bit, which obviously if you can play with the information in a way that, triggers an exploit, bada bing, bada boom. Okay. I might come back to this paper with some more notes. But let's move on to the next one, because we're an hour into this stream and we've only gone through one. All right, RCE on CSGO client using unsanitized entity ID. Let's refresh the page real quick. RCE on CSGO client using unsanitized entity ID and entity message. This one made $9,000, so about half of the last one, but it is also critical. That's interesting. I'll be curious to see why two different critical vulnerabilities made like vastly different amounts of money. That's interesting. Okay. Let's see. Weakness, out of bound read. Critical date. So this was in 2019, so still fairly long time ago. CSVC message underscore entity message. Message is used by server to notify client about generic actions regarding entities. That's not a super helpful sentence. That doesn't tell me much. The message is described using the following protocol buffer. Message optional int32 ent underscore index, optional int32 class underscore ID, optional bytes ent underscore data. So I don't know what these 1, 2, 3 means at all. Those may just be placeholder datas. I don't really know. Pseudocode of function handling this message is this. All right, so pet peeve, including pseudocode that is hardly usable. Like, so what this is saying, a process entity message, so that doesn't matter as much. It takes in that entity message object. IC client network entity is equal to entity list get client networkable. So this just doesn't really do much. So this is basically just saying the pseudocode of a function handling the message is this function that handles the message. That doesn't do much. This is more interesting. This explains it a little bit better. I just don't think this pseudocode was very helpful. Neither handler nor get client networkable. So neither this or this. Checks to see if an entity index is valid. An arbitrary integer can be passed. This can lead to memory access outside of an entity list and then to virtual function call on an invalid object. By careful manipulation, it can be used to divert control flow to an attacker's payload. So this is another RCE. It's not via buffer overflow necessarily. It's just basically, yeah, this wouldn't be buffer overflow. This is basically you just have direct control over a read, and that read can be used to do bad things, from my understanding at least. We'll read on. The exploit is based on the assumption that client underscore panorama.dll base address is known to the attacker. Okay, so there is another big reason why this is probably like a lower amount of money. It can be procured using additional memory disclosure vulnerability like this, which is another write-up. This might be, okay, that's a non-public report. Wonder how, I'm assuming they wrote up that report. Alternatively, in case of distributed attack, guessing an address may be viable. So that was mentioned in the last report. The first stage is to find a variable with a known address that can be controlled by the server. For example, I choose to use the map name because its copy is stored in a global variable somewhere in client underscore panorama.dll. Note that it's expected behavior and not a vulnerability. So important information there. So far, fairly well explained. Sorry, had to sit back a little bit. The stream is going a little bit longer than I expected, but I dig it. The first stage is to find a variable. Okay, we read that. Then I crafted a payload containing ROP, chain, and fake iClient networkable object. The payload is sent to server as a map name. Okay. I think I get that. I would like to see like the POC code. I'm hoping they include that in here. The payload is sent to the server as a map name. Obviously, the map name is a string and cannot contain null characters. There's easy ways to bypass this limitation by overriding it several times. That doesn't make sense at all. Final step is to use the vulnerability to trick the client into executing a virtual function on the fake object. Entity list is statically allocated array inside client, blah, 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 so the offset to the payload is constant. Okay. An appropriate entity index is calculated from the offset and the message is sent. The ROP chain goal is to run the calculator app. Okay, so that's talking about specifics. Yeah, this is, and it's not a big deal. I don't think it's not bad, but it's definitely not as well written as the last one that we read over. POC script is demonstrating RC capability on CSGO clients. Download the attached script. So it looks like, unless I'm reading this wrong, it looks like they removed the POC. There's a long conversation that they did not disclose, but I believe they may have removed this POC here because they, or maybe like the author wrote it incorrectly. I don't know. So here's another report. That one may not be disclosed. Yeah, that one's disclosed. Oh, this is the one that we just read. Okay. So similar as in that, Steam browser protocol can be used to launch an attack. Okay, so it's the exact same thing. Fairly wide impact because you can just pop that iframe in. All right. Interesting. I'm not going to create a notes section in here because frankly, there wasn't enough information in this write-up to really tell what exactly, like how exactly this works. It's not as well written. It's not badly written necessarily, but it's not super helpful. Oh, there are people in Twitch chat. Cybersecurity student here, so hyped to see someone with the tag. Currently deciding which career path I want to take, stuck between a junior security analyst or a help desk position to strengthen my skills. Which would you recommend? I have no experience in help desk stuff. Frankly, I started in threat intelligence, which might be similar to a security analyst. So security analyst is super broad for one thing. Also, thank you for the follow. I missed that. I don't know why I'm not getting notifications on. Yeah, I definitely, let me ping that again. Thank you for the follow, Silent Drift. So security analyst is like one of the worst job descriptions ever because it means nothing, or it means like a billion different things at different jobs. So that's one of the like bigger issues that I've got with shit like security analyst or whatever. Like it technically means nothing. So notifications aren't popping up on Streamlabs. That's interesting. That's why I did not know that you had subscribed or had followed. Anyways, so it would depend on what the junior security analyst actually is. Sometimes analyst means threat intelligence analyst. Sometimes analyst means a SOC worker. It can mean a billion different things. Like I've got just mad beef with people who describe it as security analyst. I've noticed so many descriptions made me very confused. Yeah, that's just one of the many issues that I've got with the field. Just like yesterday, Streamlabs is an L. Yeah, okay, I get it. I need to switch to OBS. I'm gonna do it eventually. Okay, it's on the list. The list is just super long. But yeah, I'm not gonna say don't take a position as a security analyst. Sometimes it's a rad position, and you know when you're a junior, like you don't have as many options. But beware and get a clear understanding of what security analyst actually means before you take the job, because it can mean a billion different things. Like you could be sitting in a SOC, you could be doing threat intel work, you could be a malware reverse engineer. Like it can be a billion different things. So just be careful there. That's a word of advice. Okay, gonna pop out of that one. Not a bad report, just not super informational. Like they gave like a general description of how like the exploit would work, but I like it's not a very good description, frankly. Let's move on. Oh, this one is a web app, XSS, and Steam React chat client. This one made 7,500, which is not bad. Can you explain to me what a cybersecurity engineer does? Wouldn't that be nice? I worked as a cybersecurity engineer once, and Again, it's another job description that can do a billion different things. Engineer technically means one who builds things, like somebody who builds a thing. Cybersecurity engineer does not necessarily mean that you're going to do any engineering. You're just engineering cybersecurity. Again, massive beef with job descriptions like cybersecurity engineer or security analyst or whatever. Like, they suck. But I would like to give you a better answer. Yes. But frankly, I don't have one. It can mean a billion different things. And I wish it didn't. I wish we were a little bit more descriptive with our job descriptions in cybersecurity. If I ever get the power of someone who hires and writes job descriptions and shit like that, I will ensure that none of the job descriptions that I write will be like that. They need to be explicit. I need to be able to look at the title and a couple of sentences of the description and know exactly what I would be doing in this job. Like that. That's how it is. Being frank, that's how it should be. But I am not in that position yet. Not in management. All right, cool. XSS, cross-site scripting. This is a web app exploit. The Steam chat client is a particularly interesting system to attack because it's built using a modern set of technologies with strong security characteristics. Interesting opening. It's built on React, which has some of the strongest security characteristics of any modern JavaScript application framework and avoids a lot of the unsafe, dangerously family of functions well. Interesting that they say that. I would love to dive more into that because I did not know that React was considered particularly safe. Content security policy is deployed, although with unsafe inline. This is a minor inconvenience, but an interesting step forward. The chat client, unlike most desktop applications using web technologies, runs in a custom, highly locked down build of Chrome embedded framework. That's interesting. So, first notes. I'm going to go ahead and make this note now because it's a good note. Let's make another box. And this one is going to be Steam. Let's zoom in a little bit so you can see it. Steam chat client XSS. Pop that in there. First note. The person exhibits a fairly obvious understanding of the tech stack. Author exhibits understanding of underlying tech stacks. One of the issues that a lot of people have with bug bounty hunters is they can find bugs. They cannot explain to engineers how to fix them or why they're there or how they work. They don't understand the underlying technologies. They just understand I can boop this and it bops that, which you could probably make money doing that, but it's better to have an understanding of the tech stack. Where was I? In most Electron-like systems, privilege access is granted to the JavaScript VM via the window object. Yes, this is what I've experienced. The chat client takes the interesting and potentially much more secure approach of running at, in essence, the privilege of a regular web page, allowing privileged actions only through the post message and a loopback WebSocket that communicates with the parent process. That's interesting. That's a cool design. The WebSocket carries a custom binary protocol that is very difficult to dissect over the wire, and it's leveraged such that through some common bug I have yet to find root cause on Chrome DevTool crashes if breakpoints fire as the page loads. Okay, that was a rough sentence there, but I'm assuming probably English is a second language. Perfectly fine. I think it's some kind of race that happens when web workers are active. Okay, that's cool. That is an interesting piece of information, basically saying I don't understand this, but here's how I think it works. Like that's just a good thing to include, even if there's like some clunkiness in the writing. The trend toward DOM-heavy applications is interesting to me, as many in the security industry still rely heavily on HTTP proxies that aren't able to accurately reflect the application state in these cases. Don't know how useful that sentence was, but I mean, cool observation, I guess. Techniques. React security gotchas. Okay, this is cool. So this is like a high-level overview of like React security problems. Oh, this is a long-ass write-up. Holy cow. We're not reading this entire thing on stream tonight. I'm just going to be completely real with you. I want a beer, and I'm not going to drink on stream because I'm still trying to get monetized. Damn, like they hit the show more portion. Okay, what we're going to do, so I'm going to pop this in chat real quick. We are not going to read that whole thing. That is a massive report. And it might be massive for a reason, but I'm tired, man. We already spent a lot of effort. So this one was silly. Okay. So y'all read over that report. I'm going to read over that report in my free time. This one was funny though. There's no information given in this at all. They made 20 grand, so I know it's a good one. But they said using the partner CD keys / assigned keys endpoint on a partner.steamgames.com with specific parameters, an authenticated user could download previously generated CD keys for a game which they do not normally have access to. Audit logs were not bypassed using this method, and an investigation of those audit logs did not show any prior or ongoing exploitation of the bug. So this is from Valve, right? So they were basically giving an overview of how like the vuln worked. Basically, you get free games from this, which as a massive game distributor, essentially like the only PC game distributor of note, that's obviously a big deal. Now, the summary by the author, or the person who found the bug, this might be a curse word in Russian. Yeah, that's it. It's just a meme. I don't know how they managed to get that. I guess Valve has a good sense of humor, but that was the summary by the author. Pretty funny. I'll pop that one in chat as well. I'm going to answer your question silent, I promise. I'll get to it. Let me share these links real quick. Okay. All right, we're done reading reports right now. I'm gonna figure out how I'm gonna schedule my streams in the future, but we'll talk about that. Let me read chat. Let's see. If React is the safest, my name is no. Okay, so I knew I couldn't be the only one who had not heard that React was that much safer. What role would you recommend for a first role in cybersecurity? Another kind of shitty answer to this, frankly. It depends. And I know that's not a good answer, and I know it's not necessarily the answer that you want, but it depends on what you want to do. For me, my first role was not what I'm doing now, and it's not what I'm very passionate about. My first role was in threat intelligence. Threat intelligence is its own thing. I could do 4 or 5 different videos on what that is. I'm not going to do that right now. But basically, I started in that because I had a background in software engineering through college, and I knew Chinese. Still technically know Chinese. But that basically made me a very good candidate for threat intelligence, because knowing a foreign language allows you to understand, threat actors in that foreign country, and for various geopolitical reasons, people who understood China well were in high demand. So I got into threat intelligence and found that all of my favorite projects that I worked on were all engineering. Okay, so this was across several different companies over several different years. I should have started in engineering. That's not me saying I've got regrets, because I've got a great salary now. I've got a great position. I love what I do. But for me, the correct answer would have been go engineering. Not necessarily like the best thing for my salary, because me starting in threat intelligence allowed me to kind of snake my way to a really good salary. But the point being is, like, the reason why I said earlier in my rant about like tips for people starting off in cybersecurity to become a generalist is very important, because when you become a generalist, you try out a ton of different things. When you try out a ton of different things, it allows you to find the one thing that like you're passionate about and the niche that you want to fall into. So that's the most important thing. Career development wise, finds the niche that you're passionate about, The good thing is, and like the area where I'm privileged and happy, is that in tech, you're probably not going to go super wrong salary wise. Like if you are in cybersecurity, especially, you could stumble your way into a pretty well paying job if you kind of pay attention to career development and things like that. So regardless of which niche you choose, you're setting yourself up well just by being in cybersecurity. That's not the case in most other fields, frankly, and it may not be the case in cybersecurity for that much longer. I mean, there's a bubble busting, so who knows? Point being, find the thing that you're passionate about and figure out where the jobs are at with that. So if you're passionate about reverse engineering, you can stay in threat intelligence and become a reverse engineer for a threat intelligence company or a cybersecurity company. You can write blogs. You can start a YouTube channel. There are a billion different things that you can do as a reverse engineer. Bug bounty, obviously. If you're into like incident response, I mean, you can you get a blank check as an IR responder. Now you might burn out super quickly, but very well paying positions all over the place for IR. And there are going to continue to be incidents. So there's a certain level of job security there. Again, burnout is bad in incident response, but it's an area. Point being, find the thing that you think is really, really cool, and you'll find a way to make money with it. You just have to, one of the biggest pieces of advice that's super general, and that's why I didn't mention it before, is pay attention to your professional development. Don't just kind of like go on, autopilot. Like actually pay attention to where you're going in your career, where you want to go in your career, and how to make those two things align. That's super important. Like be very intentional with it. Okay. I understand it's a broad question. No biggie. Like tons of people ask it, and it's a good question. It's just difficult to answer with anything other than it depends. Muhammad said it's 5 a.m. here. I doubt I would be able to watch any more streams, but I'll always be lurking in the comment sections of videos. Thank you for the good content, and I wish you all the best. Appreciate it, Muhammad, and appreciate it for you watching at 5 a.m. Good God. I'll be waiting for binary exploitation videos. Okay, I'll make them happen. Zizo, what do you think about being self-employed? Whew. Self-employment. Man, that's been like my dream for a bit. Self-employment is rad. Self-employment as somebody with a wife and 2 kids is difficult. The current route that I'm taking is the safer route. It's the slower route, but it's a safer route. I'm starting a couple of different companies, building apps, all in my free time. This allows me to keep insurance. It allows me to have a well-paying job, and allows me to work on the stuff on the side. Can I work on the stuff on the side as quickly or as like efficiently as I could if I just, hopped off the boat? No. But I've got a wife and kids that are depending on me, so I can't just do that. It is the dream though. Self-employment is awesome, and there are tons of opportunities for it in cybersecurity and in tech more generally. For me, I'm going the software engineering route, frankly, but there are a billion different ways to do it. But I think it's a perfectly viable field. You just have to be smart about it. The good thing is with cybersecurity and tech, but definitely cybersecurity, at least recently, again, that might change with the economy being the way it is, but you could kind of go and try out self-employment for a little while and fairly easily find your way back into a job later if it doesn't work out. Just make sure you have a very well-detailed plan, especially if you've got people depending on you and you're a single income house or you're a house that primarily depends on your income. You're going to want to make a good plan on that. I've got a plan going out over the next like 5 or 6 years, like explicit numbers down, dates down, shit like that kind of provides a framework for how I want to do it. But yeah, self-employment's rad. I was self-employed for 6 years and it's a 24/7 job. Right. And that's the thing. Like whenever you're working for somebody else, they handle a lot of stuff in the background, like insurance, they handle like payroll, they handle taxes, all of that stuff is handled in the background. If you're self-employed, yeah, you're your own boss and you get to control the money and you have all of the power and blah, 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 but you've got to handle all of that stuff now, unless you like find a way to hire people, in which case you're technically not self-employed. And I guess you're still no, you're not self-employed if you've got employees. I don't know. Regardless, like it's a ton of work. It can be very rewarding because you control everything and you get, all of the money, obviously, except for the expenses. But, there's still the fact that you've just got tons of stuff that you've got to manage. Like, just working with the government on anything is a pain in the ass. But yeah, to me, I think Silent Drift, you kind of put it well. It's not for everyone, but if you want to, you can try it. You can be self-employed while still being employed somewhere else. That doesn't sound like it makes sense, but like I've got a consulting company that I do software engineering with. That's not a plug, that's me talking about it. It's also a plug. So I've got a consulting company that I do software engineering with. I do YouTube. That's my own thing. I'm developing an app, hasn't been released yet. Got a co-founder with that. So I guess technically not self-employed. I don't know. Self-employment's kind of like a fuzzy word. What else am I doing? Probably going to start selling hot sauce. That's like super random. But yeah, basically point being, I've got a full-time job and I do all of these things on the side that technically at all of these different things I'm self-employed. So, point being, there are safe ways to do it. And I think the safer ways are often the better ways, especially, again, if you've got family. Whew. All right. Y'all have been active as hell tonight in chat. I dig it. But the stream's got to end because, frankly, I've got a bunch of other self-employed stuff that I've got to work on. So y'all have been rad. I appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed already, drop a subscription to the channel. You can also follow me on Twitch. I'm over there. I'll pop in my Twitch link. That should be the right link. So you can pop over there. Join me on Twitch if you prefer that. Subscribe, spread the channel far and wide. Do other cult sounding shit. But yeah, y'all take it easy. Appreciate y'all being loud as hell in chat. Peace.